Welcome back to our special February celebration, 28 days, 28 books. I'm so glad that you're here, and whether you're looking to expand your personal library or dive into genres you've never explored before, our carefully curated selections have something for everyone. Now, here's how you can join the celebration as we move through our book challenge, because we're here weekly when we're moving throughout the year. But for this month, as you know, we're moving daily. So hopefully you'll tune in daily. Hopefully you'll grow your library. Hopefully you'll join the conversation. But most importantly, spread the word because some of these great works deserve your voice. So let's celebrate the joy of reading together. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and stay connected with all the exciting content that's coming your way. So without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome back to the Reading Challenge. We're on book 16 now, Native Son by Richard Wright. This one, I think a lot of people have at least heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they haven't read it.
It's a classic.
It's considered a classic.
For a reason.
Yeah, for a reason. So,
Yeah.
What makes it so powerful? Why are we still talking about this book almost a century later?
Well, I think one of the things that Native Son does so well is it just throws you right into the heart of 1930 Chicago,
Yeah.
a time and a place that, in some ways feels not that different from our own, at least when it comes to these kind of fault lines of race and opportunity.
Hmm.
And Wright really doesn't shy away from the harsh realities that young black men like Bigger Thomas, the protagonist, are facing.
Okay, so Bigger Thomas, he's not just some guy in a story.
Right.
He becomes this symbol for a lot of readers.
Absolutely.
Of pressures and limitations that are placed on black men
Right.
in a society that's, kind of stacked against them.
Yeah, you really see Bigger struggling just to even breathe under the weight of all of these societal expectations. He's trapped by poverty, he has limited education, limited opportunity, and he's constantly being judged based on the color of his skin. And so I think Wright really forces you to confront this question. How much free will does someone like Bigger truly have when society keeps pushing him towards this predetermined outcome?
And it's interesting you mentioned the setting, because Chicago in the 1930s isn't just a backdrop. It's almost like another character.
It really is.
You've got these cramped, overcrowded tenements where Bigger and his family live, and then right next to them are these opulent homes of wealthy white families like the Daltons.
That contrast is so stark, and I think it's very intentional. Even the physical space reflects this deep divide between the haves and the have-nots. And I think Bigger is constantly being reminded of what he's excluded from, the opportunities that he'll never have, simply because of who he is and where he was born.
It makes you wonder how much has really changed. I mean, sure, the buildings might look different today, but haven't we seen those same divisions play out, even in modern Chicago?
Absolutely. I think Wright was really tapping into something fundamental about the way that power and opportunity are distributed, something that I think still resonates today. And that brings us to one of, I think, the most powerful themes in the book, fear. It's palpable throughout the story, almost like a character itself.
Yeah. You can practically feel Bigger's fear as he's navigating this world. It's not just fear of individuals, it's the fear of the entire system.
Right.
The fear of being misunderstood.
Right.
Wrongly accused, judged before he even has a chance to speak.
And that fear leads to really disastrous consequences. Think about his encounter with Mary Dalton, the daughter of Bigger's employer. He panics. He makes a terrible decision. And the tragedy that follows is fueled, at least in part, by this deep-seated fear.
No, it's not an excuse for his actions. But Wright makes you understand the context, the way that fear, especially when it's combined with this racial prejudice, can trap someone like Bigger in this cycle of desperation and bad choices.
It's like Wright saying, look, if you want to understand why something like this happened, you can't ignore the role of fear. It's not just an individual emotion. It's a tool of oppression. It's a way to control and limit the choices of those who are already marginalized.
Which brings us to, I think, another major theme, the search for identity. You see Bigger desperately trying to figure out who he is in a world that constantly tries to define him based on his race.
It's heartbreaking to witness. He's surrounded by these stereotypes. He's denied opportunities to express himself. And he's reduced to just this collection of assumptions. Imagine trying to build a sense of self when society keeps telling you who you are and who you're allowed to be based solely on the color of your skin.
And this lack of agency, this feeling of being trapped by external forces, it fuels Bigger's rage and frustration. He's desperate to break free, to assert his individuality, but it seems like every path is blocked.
Wright doesn't hold back in showing how that frustration, that bottled up rage, can explode in these really destructive ways. I think he's really forcing us to confront the consequences of denying someone their humanity, their right to define themselves.
It's a powerful indictment of the systemic forces at play, the way they can crush an individual's spirit and limit their potential. Now let's talk about the Daltons in more detail. They represent this liberal, wealthy white family that on the surface seem well-intentioned, but their actions, their whole way of interacting with Biggers, reveal something much more complicated.
I think they're a prime example of what we might call performative allyship today. You know, they want to be seen as progressive and sympathetic to the plight of Black people, but their actions often betray this deep-seated ignorance and a lack of true understanding.
For example, they treat Bigger more like a charity case than a human being, making assumptions about his needs and desires without truly listening to him.
Right.
They want to help him, but on their own terms, without acknowledging his individuality or respecting his agency.
And their blindness to their own privilege, their inability to see Bigger as a complex individual with his own thoughts and dreams, it ultimately contributes to his downfall. They think they're doing good, but their actions are actually perpetuating the very systems of oppression that they claim to oppose.
It's a sobering reminder that good intentions aren't enough. True allyship requires this willingness to confront your own biases, to listen and learn from those different lived experiences, and to act in ways that truly empower rather than patronize.
And then there's John, Mary Dalton's boyfriend. He's another interesting character. He's this idealistic young man, passionate about social justice, but his approach is so clumsy and naive that it backfires spectacularly.
He tries to treat Bigger as an equal, but he does so in a way that feels incredibly condescending. He's completely oblivious to the power dynamics at play, the deep-seated fears and anxieties that shape Bigger's behavior.
It's like he's reading from a textbook on how to be a good white person, but he's missing the whole point. True equality requires more than just good intentions. It requires a willingness to confront your own privilege, to understand the systemic forces at play, and to listen deeply to the experiences of those who are different from you.
And Bigger sees right through Gann's performative wokeness, which just fuels his anger and resentment even further. It's a reminder that true allyship requires humility, a willingness to learn and unlearn, and a recognition that the fight for justice is not about making yourself feel good, but about making a real difference in the lives of those who are marginalized.
And that's why Native Son is still so relevant today. It forces us to confront these uncomfortable realities of race, class, and power in a way that few other books can.
It's not just a story. It's a mirror reflecting back at us our own biases, our own complicity, and our own responsibility to do better. It's a reminder that the fight for justice is an ongoing process, a journey that requires constant self-reflection, education, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
And it's a journey that we all need to be on together. And that's where the trial comes in. It becomes this focal point, this microcosm of this entire system that's been working against Bigger from the start.
The trial isn't really about finding the truth, is it? It's more about reinforcing these existing power structures, upholding a particular narrative about Black men and criminality.
Exactly. You see the media painting Bigger as this monster, the prosecution twisting evidence to fit their agenda, and even Bigger's own lawyer seems more interested in protecting the status quo than in actually fighting for his client's life.
It's like the verdict is already decided before the trial even begins. He's guilty simply by virtue of being a Black man, accused of a crime against a white woman.
And Wright doesn't shy away from showing how the legal system, which is supposed to be about justice and fairness, can actually be a tool of oppression, a way to legitimize and perpetuate racial inequality.
It's a sobering reminder that even in a society that prides itself on the rule of law, justice isn't always blind. Now, throughout the novel, Bigger expresses this deep-seated anger and rage. It's palpable, almost like a physical force. Where does that rage come from?
Well, think about it. Bigger's entire life has been defined by limitations, by doors slammed in his face, by opportunities denied simply because of the color of his skin. So his rage is a natural response to this constant dehumanization, this feeling of being trapped and powerless.
Now, again, it's not an excuse for his actions, but it's a way for him to express his frustration, his sense of injustice, the feeling that the world is rigged against him from the start.
And Wright makes it clear that this rage isn't unique to Bigger. It's a shared experience for many Black people, living in a society that constantly tells them they're less than, that they don't deserve the same rights and opportunities, and as others.
So it's a rage born out of this systemic oppression, out of generations of injustice, and it's a rage that demands to be acknowledged, understood, and addressed. Now, despite all the darkness and despair in the novel, there are these brief moments of hope, these glimpses of humanity that shine through. Even Bigger, in his darkest moments, shows this capacity for connection and empathy.
I think those moments are crucial because they remind us that Bigger's not a monster, not this one-dimensional villain. He's a complex human being with his own thoughts and fears, desires and vulnerabilities. Even in the midst of all this rage and desperation, he yearns for connection, for understanding, for a sense of belonging.
And there's that unexpected connection he forms with his lawyer, Max. Max, despite his initial reservations, comes to see Bigger not just as a client, but as a human being, worthy of compassion.
I think Max represents a different way of seeing, a different way of being in the world. He's not blinded by prejudice or fear. He's able to see past the stereotypes and recognize Bigger's humanity, even when Bigger himself struggles to do so.
He doesn't condone Bigger's actions, but he tries to understand them, to contextualize them within this larger framework of Bigger's life experiences.
And the societal forces
that have shaped him.
And that's a powerful message in itself, this idea that even in the face of terrible acts, we can still choose empathy. We can still choose to try to understand. We can still choose to fight for justice.
And now let's talk about Wright's writing style. It's powerful, visceral, raw. He uses language to create this immersive experience, pulling you right into the heart of Bigger's world.
You can feel the claustrophobia of the tenements, the tension in the Dalton household, the fear and desperation that drive Bigger's actions. Wright's prose is like a punch to the gut. It doesn't let you look away. It forces you to confront these raw, uncomfortable truths of the story.
And that's part of what makes Native Son such an enduring work. It's not just a story. It's an experience. It stays with you long after you finish reading it.
It lingers in your mind. It prompts you to reflect on your own biases, your own complicity, and your own role in shaping a more just and equitable world.
To your understanding of the world. Because that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. It's not just about analyzing a book. It's about understanding ourselves and the society we live in. You know, one of the things that really struck me about this book is how relevant it still feels today. I mean, sure, the details might be different, but these underlying dynamics of race, class, and power, they haven't really changed that much, have they?
It's unsettling, isn't it? You read about Bigger Thomas, trapped in this cycle of poverty and fear. And you can't help but think about all the Bigger Thomases out there today facing these similar challenges, these similar prejudices, these similar limitations.
And that's where I think the real power of Native Son lies. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable parallels, to see how the past is still very much present in our own time.
Think about the way the media portrays young Black men today, the assumptions that are made, the stereotypes that are perpetuated. I mean, those same dynamics were at play in Bigger's trial. And they continue to shape the way we perceive and interact with each other.
And the Daltons, with their well-intentioned but ultimately harmful actions. They remind us that even those who claim to be allies can unknowingly perpetuate systems of oppression.
It's a call to action for all of us, to examine our own biases, to educate ourselves about the realities of systemic racism, and to act in ways that truly promote justice and equality.
Native Son isn't just a story about the past. It's a mirror reflecting our own society, our own shortcomings, and our own responsibility to do better.
And that's why I think it's so important to engage with works of literature like this. They challenge our assumptions. They expand our understanding of the world. And they help us see things from different perspectives.
They make us think. They make us feel. And they make us question the status quo. And sometimes that's exactly what we need to spark meaningful change.
Now, I know this book can be tough to read. It's brutal, it's unflinching, and it doesn't offer any easy answers. But that's also what makes it so powerful. It forces us to confront the ugliness of our own history and to grapple with these complexities of race and injustice in a way that few other books can.
It's a reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing, and it's a fight that requires all of us to be engaged, to be informed, and to be willing to challenge the systems and structures that perpetuate inequality.
Exactly.
So as you continue on your journey with Native Son, I want you to keep asking yourself, what does this book teach us?
About
ourselves, about our society, and about the work that still needs to be done to create a more just and equitable world.
Because the legacy of Bigger Thomas isn't just a story from the past, it's a reflection of our present and a call to action for the future. And it's a call that we can't afford to ignore.